Welcome to our demo for our oil pastel color monster. So I had two that were outlined in pencil and I couldn't decide which one to pick. I chose to do my kind of terrifying monster here with the tentacle arms and the sharp teeth as my monster to demonstrate for oil pastel. So when you're using your oil pastels, I always recommend starting with white first. You want to get your white down first. That way, if anything gets on it, you can always use your fingernail and scrape off the color that's on top. But white will not cover any color. So start with your white, any areas that you want first. Then you can start outlining a space, however much of it you want with one color. Outline it, trace it, and then fill it in with little circular motions like you're brushing your teeth. This will help you get a nice even coating of your oil pastel so that you can easily blend it. Now this video is sped up just a little bit, so if it looks like I'm going extra fast, it's because I have it on a little bit of a fast forward. Whenever you're finished with your first color, choose a color to blend it with. Since I used a dark purple, I'm using a dark red violet. They are right next to each other on the color wheel and they have the same value, meaning they're both dark colors, so they will blend more easily. So you're looking for colors next to each other, analogous colors on the color wheel, and also colors with a similar color value. So you can see that blended easily. The red is a little bit lighter than the purple, so I'm using that red violet to blend in with the purple since it is the lighter of the two colors. Sometimes if they're kind of similar, you can go back and forth between the two to blend them together. As you move to a new space, you can choose new colors. So on the underside of the tentacle, I'm using pink and purple. Now this is very similar to what I did on the top side, except now instead of using the dark shades with the dark value, I'm choosing the lighter values, the tint colors. So pink is light red, and then I have the light purple to blend together. So again, colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, purple and red, and then of a similar value. Now which one is lighter there? The pink, so I use the pink to blend it together. I'm going to do the little suction cups with a dark grass green, and I'm going to blend that in with the yellow green. Since the yellow green is lighter, that's the one I use to blend. So just like before, I'm starting with the outline of the colors. I'm going to keep going with that dark maroon red, that shade of red, and I'm going to add some onto the body. Now, as you're blending, remember, you can go either way on the color wheel by choosing the color that will blend best. When I did this before, I went from red to red violet. Now I'm going to go the other way. Next to red on the other side, we have red orange. So I'm taking it from a dark red to just a regular bright red, the red we're used to seeing. Then I'm going to turn that into a red orange, and finally orange at the bottom. As you're coloring your monster and you're choosing your colors, you're just going to follow this same process no matter what part of the monster you're doing. So you're going to choose two colors that are similar on the color wheel, either a light and dark of the same color, for example, light blue and dark blue, or light green and dark green, or colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. Remember to reference your color wheel in your sketchbook. That's why we made it. So here I'm doing the same thing using dark green, a dark forest green, on the underneath side of those creepy spider crab legs. And then I'm going to use the lighter green on the top. Same as before, you use the lighter color to blend. Oil pastels can be a little bit messy, so I recommend having a larger scrap paper on your table so that you're not getting them on your table. If you do get them on the table, you can use a dry paper towel to rub them away. Now, that mess is also going to be getting on your fingers. So as you're touching your paper, you may notice that you are creating fingerprints on your white space. If it is just a fingerprint, you can take an eraser and rub it off. However, you cannot erase pastel completely. So if it's just a fingerprint, you can rub it off. Now, most of those little fingerprints and smudges come from those little dusty particles that the oil pastel leaves behind as you are drawing with it. So make sure you're not pushing so hard that you have a ton of little crummy dust coming off of your oil pastel. So just like I did on the body, I'm following my color wheel. I went from the dark red into a red orange, into an orange, and then as I bring it to the top, I'm using a yellow orange as my final color in that gradation. A gradation just means going from dark to light. So I only have a few more parts to finish on this monster. Let's keep it going. If you continue using the color wheel for reference, you can continue blending colors, any two colors that are similar. So here I'm using a yellow and a yellow-green on my little swamp thing type of fin ears that I added. Now, I had some details on there. I had some lines on the fins. After I'm done blending it with color and it looks how I want it to look, you can go back in with a darker color. You can use a dark green, a dark blue, a dark purple, dark black, whatever is darker, and you can always add those details back on top. So if you wanted to add a texture on your monster, like maybe he has little pimples or little polka dots or stripes or spikes or fur, you can always go on top of oil pastel with a darker color to add that in. Now I'm adding the eye here. You know how I like to do those little wiggly lines with the darker color in the eye and then use a lighter color to blend it together. So I'm going from a dark green here on the outside, then I'm going to move it to a regular medium green, and finally use the yellow green as my lightest color to blend them together. Just like I said in the beginning, where white is the first color you use, black should be the last color you use with oil pastels. Black does get messy. It will get on your fingers, but it will also smudge into other areas of your paper while you're working. So I recommend not doing your black areas until the very end. I'm doing the pupil of this eye dark black. Remember, you can always take your paper, shake it into a trash can or a bin. Do not shake it on your carpet or your floor. So I'm going to add also some little bloodshot areas in this eye. Since he is my terrifying monster, I want him to look extra creepy. And as you're working too, you can look at your monster, you can change, you can add. Don't think that your first plan is the only plan. I'm also going to add some black inside the mouth around the teeth. Now I did this with my other monster, but I used a Sharpie. That was so much easier. However, if you're using oil pastel, you do not want to get your Sharpie anywhere near the oil pastel. Oil pastel will ruin your markers. So if you watched me do this in the other video with the Sharpie marker and you're like, why aren't you just using Sharpie again? If you're using oil pastel, stick with oil pastel. However, as I go to do my background now, I don't have to stick with oil pastel. I can. I could use it for the whole thing. I could also use crayon. I could use colored pencil. But oil pastel, anything that's oily or waxy, is going to resist the water. So what does that mean, to resist? It means it's going to push it away. So you don't have to be as extra careful when you're using watercolor if you've used oil pastel or crayon, because it will push it off. You can see I just went right over top of my little fin ear there by accident, and it's okay, it just pushed it right off. So I woke up my colors that I'm going to use with puddles. Since this monster, I was inspired by Swamp Thing with those ears and the tentacle arms, I decided I want to put him in the ocean. So I'm creating some different blues in the background now. I'm starting off with a blue-green, then I'm going to start blending around it. So you still need to be a little bit careful, even if you are using the oil pastel and the watercolor. You don't want to go right over top of it, but you can see that it's not hurting my monster at all. The watercolor is just sort of touching it and then getting pushed. It's resisting it. It's getting pushed right off. So watercolor is a good option if you chose to do oil pastel. If you did your monster in marker, regular Crayola washable marker, I would not recommend using watercolor in the background, because as you've seen in other videos, if you touch watercolor marker with water, it will turn into paint and it will start spreading uncontrollably. So watercolor is a good option to partner with your oil pastel. So if you've watched the other videos, you've seen me blend with marker, tempera paint sticks. In this video, we just finished with our oil pastel, and now we are blending with watercolor. If you couldn't tell, I want you to blend. I want you to mix colors. We did those activities in our sketchbook so that you could get some practice. Now it's time to put that practice to work to create your color monster. So I want to see some blending no matter which material you choose to use. I hope you had fun making this oil pastel color monster with me today.